Good morning. Welcome back to Planet Doug Behind the Scenes for Sunday, December 10th. And I'm still quite ill. I was getting ready over the last couple of weeks, or the last week, however long it's been, I've lost all track of time. I was getting ready to fly from Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia to Sumatra, and I booked a flight to the city of Medan in North Sumatra. And here I am. and while I was getting ready for the trip, I came down ill again, sort of a cold, flu, feverish, weak, muscle soreness, that package of symptoms. I never know what to call it anymore. But these things hit really hard now. I used to, in my youth, seems so long ago now, I would sail through a cold like it was nothing. The biggest problem was a runny nose. And in Canada, I would stock up on something that we call a Contact C. And I forget the active ingredient in Contact C, but it was basically a nasal decongestant. And it was really powerful. And I would, pop some of these Contact C, and my nose would just dry up. And then I would get these like tingly feelings all up and down my arms and legs, and a tingly scalp. Like if I touched my head, it kind of tingled. You really could feel that whatever chemical was coursing through my veins because of the Contact C. I mean, it was having a dramatic effect on my body. I could really feel it, and it, like I said, just dried up my nose. But ever since I've left Canada and I've been unable to find Contact C or whatever that active ingredient used to be, I can't find the equivalent medicine anywhere else in the world. Either the medicine in all parts of the world don't work on my body, or my body just doesn't respond to anything anymore. But anyway, this fever, cold, flu, whatever it is, just knocked me for a loop. I was exhausted. My body was so sore. Felt like I weighed 1,000 pounds. I couldn't move. And of course, that's always the worst time for that to happen, because you're leaving one country, going to another one. You've got a lot of things to do, and it's a very short flight. It's like an hour flight from KL to Medan. But that 1 hour flight is door to door. And maybe the way I live my life is the wrong way, but I mean, that's like a 10-hour journey. Flying, of course, when you're in a jet, you're flying very, very fast, but the process of getting to that flight is very, very slow. So even though you get 1 hour of super speed, you've got like 4 hours of incredibly slow speed, and then suddenly zoom, really fast for 1 hour, and then 4 hours of slow speed. So it's still a 9 or 10-hour journey, even though it was a 1 hour flight, and it takes a lot of energy. You really have to be at your best to handle the complexities of airport travel, especially in the modern world, which I assume I'll be talking about. But anyway, it was very bad timing to be ill. And of course, when you're having a runny nose and things like that, you can't sleep. It's really hard to sleep at night because you can't breathe, and you're constantly blowing your nose, and it becomes a mess, and then you end up with a headache, and you get no sleep. Anyway, I've had a lot of bad flights in my life, mainly for these reasons, and this was right up there with all of them. It was just hard. And I just woke up this morning. I'm in Medan now. I'm in my new hotel room, which I'll talk about in a minute. And I just woke up, and I slept relatively well last night, but I'm still just, feels like somebody has just been punching me in the head all night long, or I should say punching me in the head and the body all night long. I'm just out. But anyway, here I am. I have to start a new day here. And the funny thing, when I was in KL, I went out searching once again for like some kind of nasal decongestant, some sort of a cold medicine. And I struggle with that in other countries. I don't know what I'm looking for. I'm looking for that magical chemical, that decongestant that works so well for me. And I've tried everything under the sun in my lifetime, and I've never been able to find anything that lives up to my memory of what Contact C would do for me. And I haven't been able to find Contact C overseas either. Maybe that's gone out of business, or I have a vague memory of finding it one time or someone sending me some, and then it didn't really work the way I remembered either. So maybe they changed their active ingredient or my body changed. I don't know. But anyway, I went wandering around Kuala Lumpur going to all these pharmacies, and the pharmacies never kind of feel like the pharmacies I'm used to in Canada either. They don't seem like pharmacies to me. They seem like household goods stores. You go in there and there's tons of makeup and toothpaste and shaving stuff and that, but like I want the hardcore chemicals. Like, where are the drugs, basically? And a lot of these pharmacies don't have the same stock of actual medicine that I would find at a drugstore in Canada. They seem more like, I don't know what to call them. They're household goods stores. But anyway, the one place I went to, the best I could come up with was this this thing called Heurix's. And it says, capsule flew away, it's used for relief of flu and common cold, runny nose, and nasal congestion. So I thought, well, this was the only thing they had on the shelf, and I thought, okay, well, that's all I can get. Let's give that a try. But I missed the key word. I missed two things on it. One, on the front, it says, traditionally used for the treatment of the flu. So I thought, oh, traditionally, when I saw that, like, what does that mean exactly? And then you look at the back, I was trying to find the active ingredient, like, what chemical are we dealing with here? And there's a list here of the ingredients, and they are microscopically tiny. I can't read them. Like, I have like these reading glasses, which I use for like laptops and smartphones. And then I have another pair that are like much more powerful for like close-up reading. But even my powerful glasses, I could not make out these ingredients. I'm like, I have no idea. I couldn't read it, so I just bought it, took it back to the hotel. And then what I do now for these sort of situations is I'll take a picture of the ingredients or whatever it is I'm trying to read. I'll take a photo with my phone on a zoom, and then on the photo I can zoom in, and then I can read it. And I started reading through it, and there's like 20 different things there, and I don't recognize the names of any of them, but it became pretty clear that these are all organic herbs and twigs and sticks and moss and dust and who knows what is in there. But traditionally used, that should have been a giveaway. This isn't a hardcore medicine. It's basically a traditional herbal remedy. So that's what I've been taking, and I have no idea whether it does anything. But anyway, that's what I got. Originally, didn't seem to do very much, as you can tell. And then the next day I went out looking. I found a much better pharmacy that had more. And it turns out that all of even the over-the-counter medicines that you can often find on the shelf in Canada, all of those are behind the desk. So even like a Contact C product, which I could just get off the shelf in a Canadian pharmacy. It turns out, I think, these are all kept behind the counter as well. You're not going to find them on the shelf. So you actually have to talk to the pharmacy, even though it's something you don't need a prescription for, but you still have to get them from the pharmacist. So I went up to the counter and spoke to them, and I asked for some kind of nasal decongestant, and they came up with something I'd never heard of before called Sanofi Telfast. And I was very interested in the active ingredient, and it was something called fexofenadine. And before I went to the pharmacy, I went online and I looked up all the different active ingredients you can get for nasal decongestants, just so I could know what I'm looking for. And I had a list of them on my phone, but for whatever reason, fexofenadine was not on my list. And it said all over the packaging, it was meant for nasal decongestion, and it's an antihistamine, basically, which is more or less what I'm looking for. Sorry about my voice. Maybe my coffee will clear it out. Anyway, I spoke to the pharmacist about fexofenadine and what it's for, and it all seemed reasonable enough. It wasn't a chemical that I'm accustomed to seeing, but it seemed to be the same as all the other ones, just a different brand. And the pharmacist actually said that, well, even though you've never heard of it and you've never used this before, that might be a good thing because your body can get accustomed to certain medicines and may not respond to it as well over the years. So it's kind of a good idea to switch it up and hit your body with a new one, and it might be more effective. So it was a good sales pitch, and I bought myself some fexofenadine, and I read through all of the symptoms, like side effects, things that could go wrong with this medicine, and oddly enough, one of them was hives, because it's an antihistamine which is used to treat hives. Like if you have a rash, a skin rash or reaction, that's one thing an antihistamine will treat. And one of those, and you can call those hives, right? A certain type of skin reaction. So anyway, I took this back to my hotel room. I took one of those, and to my surprise, I broke out in hives, which has never happened to me before. I don't generally have negative side effects to medicine at all. I read all the side effects, but I'm not generally worried about them. I always talk about, severe nausea and vomiting. These are all major, major symptoms that are not going to happen. Like a very small percentage of people ever have these side effects, but for legal reasons, they have to list them anyway. So anyway, I took this thing, and I was waiting for, my nose to stop, making my life miserable. Maybe waiting for the fever to go down, waiting for something, waiting for that weakness in my muscles to go away. And then suddenly I just burst into hives, on my underarms and then the side of my rib cage. It's just I couldn't really walk or move around anymore because it was just too painful. I'm walking around like this with my arms out in the air, so my skin isn't touching skin because I was just covered in these big red boils that burst out everywhere. It's just well, that's a powerful medicine, fexofenadine, but apparently my body did not go well with it. I might try another one. All right, it's done. We'll see what happens, whether I burst out into hives again. Maybe my body will react a little bit better this time around. But yeah, I need some help. Well, I have things I should do today, and yeah, so hopefully that will help. So anyway, that was the lead up to my adventures flying from KL to Medan. And also as part of the lead up, I talked about this at length, I got an e-visa. I keep calling it an e-visa, but it isn't. It's an e-visa on arrival, which is a little bit counterintuitive when you think about it, because a visa on arrival, the whole thing about a visa on arrival is that you get it on arrival. The advantage of a visa on arrival is you don't have to do anything beforehand. You show up at the airport and you get your visa at the airport. So it's one thing you don't need to do in advance. You get it on arrival. But I guess getting the visa on arrival was a big problem in places like Bali, because in Indonesia, because they would have hundreds of people arriving at a time on different flights. And then there's the one little window where you get your visa. You have to pay for your visa on arrival. And then there would be a big lineup at the window in the airport as all these foreign tourists, they arrive in your country for the tropical, exotic holiday of their dreams. They're dreaming about pina coladas on the beach. And the first thing they have to do is stand in a lineup with 300 people waiting to pay for their visa on arrival. So I guess this was a problem, and they came up with this idea of an e-visa on arrival. So now you get it online in advance before you land at the airport, and then you don't have to go to the visa on arrival window. But it's not a visa on arrival anymore, is it? So, but yet they still call it an e-visa on arrival. So yeah, when I submitted my application for the e-visa on arrival, and I paid for it, my application was accepted, my payment was accepted, and then it was approved, and then I was sent a very official looking document as a PDF. And then I made sure to download that PDF to my phone and save it and I made sure to save it on 2 different phones. And you have to do that these days, because if you plan on downloading it from your email or something when you arrive, but of course when you arrive in the new country, you probably don't have internet access yet. You don't have a SIM card. So there you are at the immigration office. You got all your documents and you think, oh, I'm going to access them. Oh, I have no internet access. And then you're in trouble. So what I do, I try to remember to do, one of the 1,000 things I try to remember to do is download a hard copy to my phone in memory, save it in 2 different places on one phone and 2 different places on another phone. Because of course, even if you've got it on this phone, that's well and good, but now the battery on this phone runs out. Now what do you do? Well, at least I have it on a second phone. So anyway, I do everything I can, but I'm doing all this work in advance before arrival, so kind of that's my point here. It's not really a visa on arrival anymore. It's a e-visa, but technically it's an e-visa on arrival. So I had that document on my phone. And then when I didn't know how this would work, because I've never ever used one of these before, and I arrived at the airport in Medan, and then I was very happy to see off on the right there was a window, the visa on arrival window. That's where you would normally go, and it was empty. Not only was it empty, it looked boarded up. So my sense is they're just abandoning it now. That if you showed up at the Medan airport without a visa, without an e-visa on arrival, it would end up being a huge hassle, because the window isn't even open. And then who knows whether they can even give it to you on arrival. You have to do it in advance. So it's more like an e-visa in advance for on arrival. And then I wasn't sure what to do, but I assumed I could just stand in the immigration line, which I did. And a man actually came up to me and said, oh, do you have a visa? And I showed him my document. I got the e-visa on arrival. Oh, and he said, okay, that's good. So then I finally got to the immigration officer, and I noticed there were 2 other foreigners on my flight. And when they went up, they went to the immigration window ahead of me, because as always, I was the last person on the plane by choice. I just wait until the plane's empty, then I get up and I leave. I don't want to get into that rugby scrum in the aisle. So I waited till everybody got off, then I went off. So I was the very last person in line going through immigration. But I noticed the other foreigners, they had passport and phone ready to go. And then when they went up to the window, they handed both their phone and their passport to the guy. And that obviously had their e-visa on arrival document on there. And the e-visa on arrival has let me look, I don't know if it's a QR code or a barcode. I'd like to get my terminology right for these things. Let me look this up real quick. It has both. At the top, there's a QR code. The visa, by the way, is a B213. So that's the e-visa on arrival, 30-day for Indonesia. It's the B213 visa. And then there is a barcode. Well, 2 barcodes at the bottom. One is labeled EVOA, and the other one is labeled receipt. So I guess the barcode for my receipt, barcode for the visa itself, and then there's a QR code at the top. And I don't know what. So I just assumed when I got to the immigration dude, he would just scan one of these. I think he might have to expand it a little bit, because it's too small on the screen. So he'd probably have to expand it and then scan it. But when I handed my phone across to the guy, I guess he was new to the whole concept. He didn't know what to do with it. He was like, what is this thing? And he was sort of looking at it and why did you just give me your phone? And he had to call over to another immigration officer. Actually, the guy who came up to talk to me in line seemed to be a little bit of an expert in visa on arrival. And then my immigration officer called out to him, called him over and showed him this and said, this foreigner just handed me this. What is this? And then the guy told him, e-visa on arrival. And he said, what do I do with it? How do I process this? And then the guy ended up taking his phone and then taking a picture of my phone. So he took a photograph of it, and then he went onto his computer and started doing a whole lot of typing. And then he kept picking up his phone and zooming in on the picture he took, looking at information. And that seemed completely weird to me. It was like the whole thing is automated. I've got more barcodes and QR codes. Everything is in my online account for immigration. I thought they would just scan it. Beep. Oh, there you are, you're done. But maybe he did the wrong thing, who knows. But anyway, it was eventually processed, and then their computer prints out a small sticker. And I'm so happy about that, because one of my big problems with the modern world, I have so many problems with the modern world, but one of them is that they use up our passports way too quickly these days. They're very cavalier when it comes to my passport, because you get these visa stamps, and they're huge, and they stamp them in the middle of the page, and your passport, before you know it, all the pages are full, because, yeah, they're not being careful with how much space they use. But this sticker is just a tiny sticker. Yeah, I don't know, the size of 2 memory cards, basically. And it, they peel it off, and then this guy, he carefully placed it on my passport page on the edge, like the top left-hand corner. And I was like, wow, man, I appreciate that. Because if everybody does it that way, I could put 20 of these on every single page, right? And then for the rest of your life, you'll never have to worry about running out of passport pages again. Anyway, it all worked out. I got my little sticker. And one thing I really like about that is, because it's produced by a computer, it actually gives you all the information is on that sticker. The day you arrive and the day by which you have to leave. It gives the expiry date for your visa right there. So it reduces the possibility of anyone making a mistake, because I know lots of people have done that in the past, where they get a 60-day visa and then they end up staying 61 days because they counted on their calendar wrong. And it's really easy to do when you go from one month to the next, and the calendar has 30 days or 31 days in that month, right? And you're counting, and people forget to count the day of their arrival as one day. So they start counting with their finger. They go, 1, 2, 3, and they try to count 60 days ahead to figure out when their visa expires, or 30 days ahead, whatever the case may be. But then they make a miscalculation by one day, and it doesn't really matter. You miss by 1 day or 1 month, you've overstayed. It's the same legal problem from the point of view of immigration. So you have to get that count exactly right. And lots of people get it wrong. But with this new computerized system in Indonesia, that does it for you, and it just tells you the day. Because when I went through immigration in Malaysia, when I flew out, I was very close to the end of my 90-day social visit pass. And when I handed over my passport to the immigration officer, I wasn't sure what was going to happen, because on the Malaysian system is still on the old, they stamp it in, and they may even write it by hand, 90 days. No, it's in the stamp. You get 90 days, but it's up to you to calculate how long 90 days is. It doesn't say it on the stamp. It just says 90 days. And then when I gave my passport at the Kuala Lumpur airport, the woman was looking at it, and she was thinking for a long time, and then she started counting on her fingers, because she saw that how close I was to 90 days, and then she was going like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and she counted, and then she went, okay, you're within the 90 days. She had to count with her fingers to figure it out. And Indonesia has moved into the computer age, and they let their computers do the actual counting. And that's one thing computers can do much better than we can. At least, they can count. The other new wrinkle in terms of formalities and documentation is that Indonesia now has an online customs declaration form. And I thought, well, I might as well try that out as well. And turned out to be a very good thing that I did. It was actually the morning of my flight. I still hadn't done it. I was so overwhelmed with a whole bunch of other things I was doing and just packing and getting ready for the flight, and again, being really ill. I just didn't have a lot of energy, and I didn't want to start up another big project. It was enough just to do the visa on arrival online and all of my flights and hotel reservations, and it was like I was just exhausted. And I thought, oh, customs now, I got to do that before. It's like I couldn't face it. But I couldn't sleep at all the night before. I think that was another side effect of my flexofenadine, whatever it is. It says it's non-drowsy medication, but what they didn't put on the packaging is, well, it's not only is it non-drowsy, it is non-sleep. And you take one of these, I guess, and for me, I could not get to sleep. So I got no sleep at all during the night. Then I eventually just got out of bed at something like 3, 4 in the morning. I just gave up. There was no way I was going to get to sleep. And then since I had time before I had to leave for the airport, I thought, well, let's do this customs thing. Let's find out what that is all about. Like normally what happens, what used to happen, and this drives me crazy too, what used to happen is you'd get on the plane, you're flying to a new country, and at some point the flight staff will go up and down the aisle and they'll have the immigration arrival card and the customs declaration form in English and in the local language, and they just hand them out to you when you're on the plane. That's how it used to be. And I enjoyed that because you've got time sitting on the plane. I always made sure to have a pen. I was always very proud of myself because it seemed like I was the only person on the entire plane that ever had a pen. And I would carry extra pens because this happened to me so often. I'd be sitting on the plane and there I am with my pen, and I'm happily filling out my immigration card and my customs declaration. And my seatmate is kind of watching me, and I know what's going on. As soon as I see the eye line, they're like, they want my pen because they want to fill out their card, but they don't have a pen. And then when I'm done, they always lean over like, can I use your pen? And then I'll bring extra pens, and I'm like handing out pens on the plane. But this is going way back in time. These are the old days, and a very different world now, of course. But over the years, the flight attendants started reducing the number of times they would hand out any kind of cards. A lot of countries don't even have an immigration card anymore. Malaysia, for example, got rid of their arrival cards a long time ago. I don't remember the last time I had to fill out an arrival card for Malaysia. Of course, Malaysia just introduced an electronic version of the arrival card. I think the story is that they've opened up visa-free entry into Malaysia for a lot more countries, like from China in particular. They're trying to get more of that China tourism market. And now, hand in hand with making it easier for people to come to Malaysia, they've also put in more procedures. So they've just, even as they opened up visa-free arrival for a lot of nationalities, now they've added an online arrival card. So even though for years you haven't had to fill out an actual arrival card, they've reintroduced it, but they've made it online. So everybody who goes to Malaysia now has to, before their flight, go onto the website, whatever it is, track down the link, and then fill out an arrival card in advance. And I assume you'll get a QR code, you'll get a document that you're going to have to keep on your phone and then present it when you go into immigration. So they made it easier, and then of course they made it more difficult at the same time. That's what they always do. But anyway, even as arrival cards disappeared, the customs card still existed. And the customs card was always, for me, the dumbest thing about going to another country. It just made no sense at all. It was basically a document where you could either incriminate yourself or not. And of course, nobody's ever going to incriminate themselves. So you got this little card. There's a big, well, not little, it's a long customs card tiny lettering on it, and you're on the plane, kind of bouncing around trying to fill this out. And there's never enough room for the information they ask for, but you got to write down your full name and address back in your home country, the address of the hotel where you're going to be staying when you arrive. And then you have to answer all those questions, all these terrible things you're not supposed to have with you. You have to physically say, no, 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 no. I don't have any of these banned items. And then you sign it at the bottom. And then when you go, your handwriting is usually illegible because there's no space to write anything down. And then you're trying to figure out, like, even international addresses are complicated. I know what an address looks like in Canada. It has a certain structure to it. But when you're landing in, Indonesia even, and you have to fill out the full address of the hotel, you don't know, you can't make any sense of it. The street number, the street address, the district, the this, the that, it all looks unfamiliar to you, and you get bumped by your seatmate, and then you're trying to fill it out. So the card itself is illegible. And I think a lot of it is just made up. Most of the time, back in those days, I never had a hotel booked in advance, but they would make you write down the name of a hotel. I would just invent the hotel out of thin air. It didn't even have to exist because it's not like they're going to check. Because I remember the one time, very, very early in my life, I went to Japan on a short trip, and I was trying to be honest, and I just left that part of the customs form blank, because I was going to go into the city and then find a hotel. So I thought it would be good, just be an honest, good boy from Canada. So when I went up to immigrate or handed in the card to whoever, and somebody asked me, where are you going to stay? And I said, well, I don't know yet. I'm going to find a hotel. And that, of course, got me pulled out of line, brought into an office for a big, long interview about, who I am and what I'm doing in Japan. And before they would let me go free, I had to make a reservation at a hotel before they would let me go. And this was before smartphones, before online reservations. So, they had to make a phone call and call a hotel. We had to figure out where I was going to stay. So, of course, I ended up staying in a much more expensive place than I could afford because they're not going to have access to budget hotels. And then it turned into this huge problem where they forced me to make a reservation before they would let me out of immigration, like out of the airport. So from that day on, I made sure always to fill everything out. And if you don't even have the name of a hotel, just invent one. It's just a lot easier that way. But then once you've filled out all this information on the customs card and then you go into the airport, there's always just someone standing there collecting the cards from someone, like from everybody as they go by. They don't really look at them, they don't examine them, and 150, 200, 300 people go by them, and they just think, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. And they end up with this big stack of these customs declaration cards. And I assume they put a rubber band around them and then throw them in a box. So it was always, the form itself always struck me as a ridiculous part of modern bureaucracy. I don't think they ever used the forms for anything. They would all be either illegible, filled out incorrectly, or just filled out with nonsense that people just invented, so they were completely useless. But now that entire thing has been moved online for Indonesia, and I assume that's going to be the same for every country around the world. So you can now track down this website for Indonesian customs and go there, and the information is the same as the paper form. Name and passport number and date of birth and date of issue, date of expiry, the hotel address, phone number, all that information. And then the next page, you click next, and then it's like, no, I don't have this, I don't have this, I don't have this, I don't have this. You say no all the way to the bottom, and then a few more pages. I can't remember the details. You submit it, and they say, thank you very much, and then you get a QR code, just a big QR code. And I didn't know how this was going to work either. And I assumed that if you didn't do this online, that when you landed at the airport, you would stand in line at, you go into the immigration area, and while you're there, you're still busy filling out the customs declaration form. I just assumed they'd have them on a counter somewhere, as they normally do, with a bunch of pens that don't work, and then you have to, fill them out on the spot. That's what I thought would happen. But as it turns out, they've gotten rid of the paper forms completely. So when you land at the Medan airport, you go into this room, and there was like total panic there because nobody knew what to do. This was a brand new system. Even I had no idea what was going on. When you walk into the room, there's a big sign that had a QR code on it. So I guess when you walk into that room, you can take your phone, scan the QR code, and it will take you to the Indonesian customs website, and then you could fill it out on your phone, just as I had done back in Malaysia. So I thought, oh, that's kind of cool. I wasn't expecting that. And I guess if you can't do that, they had a bank of computer terminals. So in fact, this new system involved expense on their part because they had to install, 20 computers, 10 on each side of the room, and all the other passengers on my plane were lining up at these computer stations because they had to go online to the immigration website and fill out the customs form online to get their QR code. And I guess the QR code would go to their email address, and they'd have to access it on their phone. And then now when you exit from the customs area, there's one guy just sitting at a desk with a big round scanner. And then you walk up to him with the QR code on your phone on display, and then you just hold it up to the scanner, beep, and that is your customs declaration now. It's like, oh man, oh man, oh man, oh man. So much to do, so much electronics. And I guess I don't know, I'm not going to say it's a bad thing. I mean, if you have to fill out a customs form, you might as well do it digitally. But of course, that all assumes and depends on you having a phone in good condition, having email addresses that work, having a battery that's fully charged, and having internet access. And the only reason I would be able to do any of those things is hooking up to the public Wi-Fi in the airport. So that's a key concept, I think. All these airports that are introducing all these online features, the only way it could possibly work in the long run or be efficient at all is if they have good, free, easily accessible public Wi-Fi, so that people show up and they need to do all these things on their phone, and they don't have a SIM card, they don't have mobile internet, they don't have an eSIM card, then it all works out. But yeah, even though I had done the customs declaration in advance and I had a QR code, I had no idea how it would now work. It's like, okay, now I've got this QR code, but what is that going to mean when I land at the airport? So it was really interesting to see the process, that the paper form was gone, so that no matter what, you have to do the online form now. You don't have a choice. I mean, you can do it before you land, or you can do it when you land, but no matter what, you're doing it online now. So you might as well do it in advance before your flight and get all this taken care of. So yeah, that was an interesting part of my trip yesterday too. Going back in time a little bit, I've talked about the e-visa on arrival, the customs, going through immigration and customs, all that kind of thing. But before any of that happened, I was also packing and getting ready for the trip, and that was a little bit complicated for me because I was kind of switching over from a life of riding a bicycle and riding a scooter to a backpack, because I wasn't bringing my bicycle to Indonesia this time. And I'm not sure if I'll be renting a scooter or not. Probably not. My plan is just to sort of backpack around like a normal person. And it took a lot of time for me to do that. I think on a bicycle, I'm more willing to carry a heavy load because I have a bicycle trailer, and the trailer is quite heavy, and I don't really worry that much about what I bring with me. Like even when I went to Sumatra before, I brought a ton of camping gear, because I thought I would be doing a lot of cycling and I would be camping out a lot. So I brought a tent and sleeping bag and a stove and fuel and a cooking pot, all these things. And that adds a lot of weight, especially when you consider I've also got a laptop and smartphones and electronics and camera gear. It's a very, very heavy load. And then when I was in Kuala Lumpur, I was switching over and I just sort of grabbed all the things that I wanted to bring with me and put them into my backpack. And oh man, I could barely even lift it. It's a big change to go from a bicycle, for me anyway, to a backpack. I had to suddenly think about the weight and what did I really need to bring with me and what could I do without. And that ended up being a little bit of a project for me. Yeah, I go back and forth on this issue. You know, you got the whole, the lightweight travelers out there in the world. I was talking about this with a friend of mine, that one of the secrets to being a travel light sort of person is staying in nice hotels. If you raise your budget, and let's say you are going to always take private cars, which is what most people do these days, even YouTubers I've noticed. There's a whole different lifestyle from the old days of backpacking. Because in the old days of backpacking, you did everything yourself. Then you'd land at the airport and you get on the local bus and take the local bus for 10 cents that takes you downtown. And then you're walking around trying to find a, $5 a night or $1 a night budget guest house near the train station or something. Those crazy train station neighborhoods or bus station neighborhoods. But it's very different now. Even like YouTube travel vloggers, they all have suitcases. Everyone has a suitcase with wheels, and it looks so amazing and it looks so convenient because they just, they wake up in the morning in their nice hotel and everything was supplied to them. They supplied towels and toiletries, everything they might need. There's a nice restaurant at the hotel. Breakfast is included in their room rate. So they just pop downstairs, have a nice buffet breakfast, have a cup of coffee. Then they go up to their room and they take their little roller suitcase and they roll over to the elevator, take the elevator down to the lobby, and then they put their little suitcase into the Grab car, and the car drives them to the airport. And when they land at their new country, they do exactly the same thing, but in reverse. Now they just roll their suitcase through the airport, ride, with there's elevators at the airport, whatever, summon their Grab, and the Grab takes them to their pre-booked hotel room, and they roll it in there and get in the elevator. It takes them up to their room. It's all a very easy, sort of convenient lifestyle. But a lot of it is because the hotel and the transportation gives them so many things that they need. But if you're not going to take advantage of that, you don't have the money for that, well, then you're going back into more of a backpacker lifestyle. Like in my case, there's no breakfast at my hotels. So if I want to have a morning cup of coffee, I bring my own coffee and I bring my own kettle to boil water. I have to bring, of course, towel. I even bring my own bed sheet, as I've talked about in the past, because these hotels don't provide bed sheets. You might get a big, thick, like nylon duvet that covers basically from mid-chest to mid-thigh. They're always way too small for me. And there's no sheets on the bed, so you have to bring your own bed sheet. And that adds a couple of pounds because cotton is actually quite heavy. You have to bring your own towel, your own shampoo, your own toothpaste. I do a lot of my own laundry, so I bring laundry soap, and I might bring my own foldable bucket, kettle, get water. You end up, first of all, needing to carry a lot more. Like a lot of the hotels I stay in, the rooms will be filled with mosquitoes because they're not, sealed sorts of places. So you might want to bring your own mosquito net, and you never know what's going to happen. So yeah, you just end up bringing a lot more stuff because the hotel you're staying at doesn't provide you with anything. So there I was with my usual set of gear when I was in KL, and I loaded up my backpack, and right away it was obvious that, if you're just traveling, it would be fine. But if you're also shooting video and you need a laptop and you need camera gear, batteries, chargers, tripods, things like that, it's too heavy. you cannot reasonably carry that much stuff. So then while I was in KL, I was busy sorting through my gear, figuring out what can I bring and what can't I bring. And then one thing I like to do on a lot of my trips, I've done this a lot in the past, is do a pre-trip, because it makes a huge difference. Like if you're going on a bike journey, a long bike tour, for example, the last thing you want to do is just pack and then leave on your trip, because you haven't figured things out yet. So what you need to do is pre-pack and then go on a pre-trip. It doesn't even have to be a very complicated one. You can ride your bike 10 kilometers, camp for the night in your tent, spend one night in your camp, cycle 10 kilometers back. And that one experience will teach you a lot about your gear. It's like, oh man, I have too much stuff. I don't have enough stuff. I needed this, but I don't need that. And same thing for backpacking. If you're going on a trip with a backpack, it's kind of nice to do a pre-trip. So like if you're sitting at home in Canada and you're going to fly to Thailand for a 2-month trip, it'd be a really good idea that in your home country, your home city, pack up and move to a hotel for one night, as if you're leaving on your trip. Just get fully packed in advance, kind of a test packing, and then leave from your apartment, go stay in a hotel for one night, and then go back to your apartment. It's like, it will force you to really, really seriously pack. Plus, it will teach you a lot about things you're bringing with you you don't need, and things you didn't bring that you will need. And I did that when I was in KL. So I was staying at the Kojoy Hotel. I was based there doing all of this packing. And then for the last night, I booked a room at a different hotel, the J Hotel Masjid. So that meant that before my flight, the day, whatever it was, 2 days before my flight, I was forced to completely pack everything as if I was leaving to go to Indonesia. But all I was really doing was just walking a few blocks, checking into a new hotel. And then when I got into the new hotel, it was instantly obvious to me that my backpack was too heavy. So then I had a whole day, kind of a day and a half, where I could sort through all my gear and pare it down. And like, yeah, okay, no, I have to get rid of some of this stuff. It's not reasonable. So yeah, that's what I was doing in Kuala Lumpur. There are a lot of things, though, that fall into a gray area where, yeah, should you bring them or not? And you're kind of like balancing the weight versus the convenience, right? Even in Kuala Lumpur, I did this really severe pre-packing where I took out tons of stuff that, okay, do I absolutely need this? No, I'm not bringing it. Do I absolutely need this? No, I'm not bringing it. But absolutely need is different from, yeah, it's kind of handy. So what I did when I was in KL, I did that absolutely need, and I made 2 different piles, and I was all ready to go. But then my backpack was kind of light. It was like, wow, it's really light now. I think I can afford a bit more weight. I can carry it. And I have a huge backpack, so I have the space. Physically, I could carry it. So I thought, maybe I don't need to be so severe. So I went over to my absolutely don't need pile, and I kind of went, this might be kind of handy. And then I moved things back into the bring with me pile. So for example, flip-flops, like bathroom style flip-flops, because all I have is 1 pair of sandals. That's the only footwear I have. And quite often it's really handy to have flip-flops. And I put them in my, do I absolutely need these? No, I don't absolutely need them. And they weigh a pound or half a pound, whatever it is they weigh. And a lot of those pounds add up very quickly, so I decided not to bring them. And at the last minute, I put them back in my backpack. And here at this hotel, I just use them constantly because I didn't bring my kettle. And the main reason I didn't bring my kettle is because it was heavy, but also the wire had broken. So I could see that, yeah, it's garbage now. The wires are soon going to Like they snapped off the kettle itself. There's an exposed wire, so it's going to short circuit and burst into flames. So I figured even if I need a kettle, I'm going to have to buy a new one because this one was broken. So I wasn't going to bring the kettle. I don't have a kettle with me for my morning coffee, but in this hotel they have a hot water dispenser in the lobby area. So when I have my morning coffee here, I have coffee mixture, my instant coffee, but then I go down to the lobby and then I fill up my cup with their hot water and bring it back up to my room. And I could do that with my sandals, but my sandals are hard to put on. You got to get your feet in there, you got the straps. It's a lot of hassle to go in and out of your room all the time. And every time you go out, you have to put on your sandals or put on your shoes. So it's been really, really handy to have the flip-flops, because I just slip my feet into the flip-flops and I flip down to the lobby, get my coffee and hot water, and then I flip back up again. And of course, when you're staying in low-budget hotels, you do have to think about the bathroom. It's very easy in like cheap hotels to get like foot fungus and things like that from bathrooms. So it's kind of nice to have bathroom flip-flops, keep your feet off the floor in there. So, I go back and forth about the weight of certain items, and my flip-flops, I put them back into my bring with me pile, and I'm very glad that I did because they've already been very, very handy. But anyway, I did all that in Kuala Lumpur, and then the morning of my flight, I was finally ready to leave. And then began all the usual Planet Doug adventures. I was going to take the airport bus from KL Central to the airport. And in fact, I was going to shoot a kind of a behind-the-scenes practical video about how to take the airport bus in Kuala Lumpur, because I think finding the airport bus at KL Central is kind of complicated, and I was going to shoot a video about that, but at the last minute I just couldn't face it because I was so sick, and I was so tired, and I was so overwhelmed with everything I was doing. I was like, oh, no, I can't take a video of this journey. It's just going to be too much. So I didn't film that experience. I just went to the MRT, rode the MRT to KL Central, and I went down to the bus area where the airport buses leave from. And then I was kind of disappointed because normally when I do that, it costs 15 ringgit for the bus to the airport. That's another thing about this budget business, because it would be so much easier for the easiest thing by far, of course, is you're at your hotel and then you want to go to the airport. Well, you just call up a Grab, boop, and then you pay for the privilege, but this car will come right to your hotel. Then you get in the car and it takes you right to the airport, and you arrive there fresh and not sweaty, not exhausted, not stressed out, and you have a much more enjoyable trip. But of course, if you have to save money, you're looking at the airport bus, and now I'm looking at walking from my hotel to the MRT station, and then navigating all the tunnels and the escalators and getting down to the platform, waiting for the train. Could be rush hour, and then you have to go to KL Central, exit from the MRT station, go to the bathroom there, of course, and then navigate your way to the airport bus. And the airport bus at KL Central is in this underground parking area. It is so hot and muggy and dark down there. You feel like you've gone into some subterranean post-apocalyptic world. It's not an open, breezy sort of place. It's hot and it is dark and it is muggy down there. But normally when I go down there, there's an airport bus is just waiting because they leave quite frequently. You get your ticket and then boom, you're on the bus and you're going. And it's not like a fancy bus. Nobody's taking care of you. You have to put your own luggage in the luggage compartment. And generally the people there are not the nicest. They're just loading people on, and they're not exactly hired for their customer service skills. So it's not a very pleasant experience for the most part. This time I went there, and my usual airport bus, like the Sky bus, wasn't there. It wasn't like sitting there waiting with the door open. And when I went to get the ticket, the guy told me, no, the next bus is not for about an hour. And it was like, yeah, the next bus, forget the time that he told me, but I'd be waiting for close to an hour for the airport bus. I thought, well, that's kind of, I guess I have no choice. Luckily, I'd left early, so I did have enough time. But it wasn't great news because I didn't want to hang out in that place for an hour. And it's a very narrow sidewalk area with people coming and going. It's a very uncomfortable place to wait. But there was a bus there. An airport bus was there, and the door was open, and the luggage compartment was open as I bought my ticket. And then the bus opened up, and all the people that were waiting started pouring onto this bus. So I thought, oh, maybe this is my airport bus. So, everyone else is in line. I might as well give it a try, right? So I got my backpack and I manhandled it into the luggage area. And that wasn't easy to do because everyone else had beat me to it. And they put all their suitcases in, and the whole thing was jammed with suitcases. But there was an area up above the suitcases, like a little shelf. And getting my backpack up into that shelf area, I can do it. I'm getting up in years, but I'm still physically capable of doing all these things myself. I'm relatively strong, so I could get down, bend down, and grab my backpack and jam it up in there. But I could see a lot of people, even people my age, ordinary people, wouldn't even be capable of doing that. And again, this is not the sort of airport bus where anyone's going to help you. So if you can't get your luggage in there, you're stuck. So anyway, I got my bag jammed in there. And by this point, I was just drenched in sweat. My shirt was soaking wet. Everything, I was just soaked with sweat. And then I got in line with everyone else, and I handed over my ticket. And the woman looked at my ticket and said, no, this is the wrong bus. It is going to the airport. This is the airport bus, but your ticket is not for this bus. And she said no, and handed me my ticket back. So then I had to go back to the luggage area and, of course, and reverse everything and get it done before the bus took off and pull my backpack out. It was really hard to get it into that space. And now getting it out again got me even more hot and sweaty. So I pulled my backpack out. I went to sit down, and I figured, okay, I just got to wait. And then I'm waiting a few minutes. And then the same woman, came up to me and said, oh, you can go. You can go on this bus if you want. And I went, seriously? She says, yeah. Okay. So I grabbed my backpack again, go back to the luggage, jamming it up in there again. And I got onto the bus, and this bus was like a super luxurious airport bus. It was like, wow, this is comfy. Had 2 seats on one side and 1 seat on the other. So instead of 4-seater, 2-2, it was a 3-seater, meaning every seat could be bigger and wider and had a lot of cushioning, like really soft, comfortable seat, beautifully air conditioned. It was really quiet on board, nice and cool. So I guess what I paid for was the regular 15 ringgit Sky Bus, which is the low class, cheapest way to go. And I guess this is a different company, but just as the bus was getting ready to leave, they realized they had a bunch of empty seats. The bus wasn't completely full. So I guess at that point, they're allowed to talk to the Sky Bus and say, do you mind if we poach some of your passengers? And maybe they transfer payment or something? I don't know what the arrangement is. But anyway, the woman came up to me, she remembered me and said, oh, if you want to, you can take this bus. And she accepted my ticket. I assume this bus was more expensive. I didn't even know this option was available. But anyway, so jammed my backpack in and I got on this bus. To my surprise, this bus followed a completely different route to the airport. I've done this trip many times and I feel very familiar with the highway system. I couldn't drive it myself, but whenever I take a bus to the airport in Kuala Lumpur, everything feels familiar. It's like, okay, this curve, this toll booth, that scenery, those buildings. I recognize all of it, but this bus took a different route. So I was a little bit concerned that maybe we were not going to the same place, but at the very end, everything looked familiar again. Oh, there's the airport, and I remembered exactly where we go on this airport bus, and it dropped me off, and everything was fine. So there I am at the airport, and then from there, you know, I'm getting better at these things over the last, it feels like, to be honest, the last 10 years of my life, not quite 10 years, but let's call it 5 years, maybe 7 years, has been spent just keeping up with technology. Because there was a time when I think, you know, technology is like a river, just flowing fast, changing. And I stepped outside of the river for a while. I didn't keep up with technology, so technology advanced while I wasn't paying attention. And then I had a huge game of catch up to do, just to get up to speed. So I finally got up to speed, and I'm Mr. Modernity now. I mean, I've got it all. I've got all the tools of the trade. I got all the electronics a human being can possibly handle. I've got all the apps. I've got everything there is to have. And yet, they keep introducing so much new technology every week, every month. There's so much you need to keep up with. And I'm getting better and better and better at it. And one of the more recent things is the whole self-check-in and self-baggage drop-off and everything being electronic. So for a while, even though I'd gotten used to checking in for my flight online, and I get my boarding pass online, like everything is done before I get to the airport, I'm up to speed with that, but I would still be uncomfortable without a piece of paper. And even though I do everything online, I would still go off on an errand, find a print shop, and then I would get my boarding pass and my ticket. I'd get everything printed out so that I have a paper copy. I felt more comfortable that way. But eventually I got to the point where it worked out so well using just the phone, I don't worry about that anymore. So I do everything online, everything's booked online. I've got my phone, I've saved digital copies of everything. So now when you go to the airport, of course, you don't actually have to go up to a counter to check in anymore. And in fact, AirAsia, which is the airline I used for this flight, there is no longer even an option. You can't really check in for your flight physically with a human being anymore. And because that's what I would normally do. I would check in online, get my boarding pass, everything digitally, but then I would still go stand in a lineup so that I can drop off my bag. And then they check me in for the flight all over again. You know, they check in my bag, they put the luggage tag on it, you know, they weigh it. And yeah, that was just what I would do. But then AirAsia got rid of all that. You can't even do that anymore. So you have no choice unless you have a physical reason that you cannot drop off your own bag. You must do baggage drop off yourself. So now you have to go up to you have no choice is what I'm saying. You have to go up to one of the little machines and then get your own luggage tag. You have to, you know, confirm you are who you are, scan this, scan that, you know, enter this information, and it prints out a luggage tag, and you put it around your own bag, and then you trundle across to another part of the airport where there is self-baggage drop-off. And then you go up to the machine and they got a scanner, you read the instructions and you scan everything and put your bag, and it weighs it automatically and then sends it on its way. So I did all of that myself, which wasn't easy. I won't tell the whole story, but you can, you know, use your imagination, all the things that went wrong standing in line at one of these machines. They're very, very crowded because everybody has so much luggage on the trolley, and yet the self-check-in machines are so close together. There isn't enough room to maneuver, and you're standing in line there waiting. By the time I got to the front of the lineup, my machine broke. The person ahead of me just gave up, and it just had a blank screen, so I had to go to another machine after that. I eventually got it done. And then you're dealing with other human beings. And I don't know what was going on at the airport that day, but it was more crowded than it should have been, more chaotic, more frantic. And there were a lot of people that seemed to have no clue what they were doing. just couldn't figure anything out, and a lot of shouting, like big groups of people that were just shouting at each other all the time because one member of the group would do something wrong, have no idea, everyone's trying to help, a lot of shouting, and then they would just block the way everywhere I went. People would just stand in the lineup and just, they have no reason to be there, and they would just block the flow of people. They're just standing there, and then you can't get past them. You're waiting for them. People are abandoning their luggage trolleys when they don't need them anymore. They just leave them behind wherever they are. It ends up blocking your access to the baggage check-in area. It was just completely chaotic. And that continued all the way through the flight, going to the boarding area. Again, AirAsia leaves from the low budget subterranean levels of the airport. It's not like the fancy, spacious, comfortable places of the premium airlines. You know, they put AirAsia way at the end, you know, Gate L. Gate L is the worst at the Kuala Lumpur International Airport. And I was upset to see that my flight was leaving from Gate L. I was like, oh no, not Gate L, because it's like a narrow hallway without enough seating, and it's just crowded and crazy. And then on the plane itself, you know, you can imagine all the people with their masses of luggage. I mean, I check in my backpack and I make sure that my little knapsack is, you know, way below 7 kilograms, and mine is small enough. I don't even need the overhead compartment. I mean, I put my big bag, I check it in, I pay for checking it in, and then I have my little bag, goes right underneath the seat in front of me. You know, I don't need the overhead compartments. But I don't know how some people get away with it, because it seems like they've gotten very strict about the 7 kilogram limit. When you enter into the departure area, you know, you have to go through immigration, and then you arrive in the departure gates. There is a pre-screening where they're making sure that you have a ticket and the ticket matches your passport, and they check your carry-on bags, and they have a scale there, and they are weighing all the bags that go through. They didn't bother weighing mine because it's clearly under the limit. It's a very small bag. So they wave me through, but anyone that has larger bags, they're weighing them, and then if they're more than 7 kilograms or too big, you know, they send them away. It says, yeah, you got to deal with this. So I saw all that going on, but then once I got into the departure area in the gates themselves, I saw people with massive bags, like 2 huge bags. Like, I saw some foreigners, like backpackers, and they would have their backpack, like their full-on backpack, and then their full-on knapsack, both of them big. And then you saw the people with suitcases. Like, I guess they fit, like even these backpacks and the roller suitcases, they're within the size limits for the overhead compartments, because overhead compartments have gotten much bigger in modern airplanes. I see suitcases that people bring as carry-on, and I'm like, there's no way that is fitting in the carry-on. But then I see them get on the plane and they lift it up and it slides right into place. It's like, wow. Yeah, they fit in terms of the dimensions. But when you see them pick that suitcase up, it's just like, yeah, they just managed to get the lid, the edge of the suitcase where the wheels are, just like, they get it on there, and then they lift it up. They're way above 7 kilograms. And even the backpackers that have the big backpacks, you can just see the way they're walking. They're full, it's all their luggage, and it's way above 7 kilograms. How in the world are they getting through the screening? There's only one screening point, and I went through it. And yet, so these people must have gone through that same screening. How in the world did they get past it? Like, where are these huge bags coming from, the heavy ones? Anyway, people do it. So, of course, that means when you get on board, it takes forever to board the plane, because every single person that gets down the plane, they get to their seat, and now it takes them 10 minutes to find space in the overhead compartment for their huge suitcase. And then, of course, they want to put their suitcase right beside their seat. And if there is no space there, it ends up this big confusion. So it takes forever to load the plane because of all this luggage hassle. And I end up feeling a little bit resentful because I did the right thing. I paid for a checked bag because I knew my checked bag. That's what you're supposed to do above 7 kilograms. You check it in. And carry on, you bring a little carry-on bag, which is only what I need for the flight. It contains my most essential things, my GoPros, my passport, and my smartphones, my laptop, and my tablet. So all of the most essential items in my life are in my thing, in my knapsack. It comes to about 6 kilograms. I even have my own scale. I bought a scale that you can use to weigh your own luggage because I don't want any surprises. So I weigh my knapsack before I go to the airport, and if it's anywhere near 7 kilograms, I'll take items out that I don't need for the flight, put them into my check bag because I want it at below 6 kilograms. And that's hard to do with a modern laptop and electronics, but I get it below 6 kilograms. And then I weigh my backpack just to make sure that I know how much it weighs, because you get like 20 kilograms for a checked bag is the maximum, so I make sure I'm under that. So I have my own scale. I put a lot of effort into making sure my luggage fits. I pay for a checked bag. It's not cheap. And yet I see all these people that somehow their entire backpack, their huge suitcase, everything they're bringing on their trip, they bring it all as carry-on, and the airline lets them get away with it. So I got my eye on you people. You know who you are. I mean, I can't blame people. They're just getting away with what they can get away with, and why not, right? Life is hard enough. Life is expensive enough. If you can get away without paying for a checked bag, obviously you're going to try to do it, and it's more convenient in a way. To be honest, I don't see why it's so convenient. People that insist on having only carry-on bags, they talk about all the advantages of it, one being that they don't have to go to baggage claim. But I'm like, what? How long does that take? My bag it takes so long to get through customs and immigration. My backpack is always there waiting for me. By the time I go to the baggage claim area, there it is, going around on the little belt. So, and if I had used only carry-on, maybe it would have saved me 30 seconds, 2 minutes. It's not like I can't spare 2 minutes in my life. But anyway, yeah, so that's always a bit of an adventure. And my flight was jammed, absolutely full. And it's an AirAsia flight. Those planes aren't designed for people of my height. I got a window seat just so I could get tucked away into a corner somewhere. And my knees are like jammed up against the seat in front of me. You're like inside a coffin, it's like, I can't even move. And there was so much chaos and confusion, a lot of conversation, which is unusual. I'm used to these flights being very quiet, but there are all these people going to Medan who are part of these big groups, mainly women, tons and tons of women who seem to be in groups. Must have been some kind of a social club or conference or work-related trip. I don't know, but they all knew each other, and man, the talking, just like, yeah, it was a very, very loud flight, but it's only an hour, less than an hour. The captain told us we were way ahead of schedule. I guess we had a tailwind, just sort of blew us into Sumatra. We landed there, and everything worked out fine. Plane went up, plane went down, and suddenly I was in Sumatra. And after everything that had happened up until this point, it seems crazy to say it, but that's when the real adventure began. And it was a surprising adventure because my plan was to take the airport express train from the airport to downtown Medan. And I've taken this train in the past, and I had memories of it being, a little bit challenging. It's not the same as the express train in Kuala Lumpur, the KLIA Express. You can take from the airport to KL Central. That is like smooth sailing, very well organized, tons of trains. You pay a premium for that, as opposed to the airport bus. You pay, I think it's like 5-6 times more expensive than the bus. But for that extra amount of money, you get a very nice, fast, comfortable express train experience. Whew, takes you into Kuala Lumpur or out to the airport. It's a very, yeah, it's an express luxury kind of train. So my experience of the one here in Sumatra going to the Kuala Namu airport is not quite at that level. It's never been as nice as the Kuala Lumpur train, but it was, my memory of it was, okay, it is nice. And for people who have a little bit of extra money, it would be the preferred way of traveling from Kuala Namu airport in Medan to downtown Medan. So what I wanted to do was take that train and shoot a video about it for YouTube. And I wanted to do like one of these practical how-to videos. Like for anyone who's going to fly into Medan airport, Kuala Namu airport, and they want to go to downtown Medan, here is how you take the express train. And it was supposed to be really simple and really easy, but it turned out not to be that way at all. But I did get out my GoPros and I recorded the experience, and there were a number of problems I encountered. One is that the train that was leaving right away, I could have made it. I got off my flight. It was a bit of a tight connection, but I got through customs and immigration really quickly because I did everything in advance, and I could have made this train, but it was full. All the seats were sold out. And you can book this train online, which is what most people do apparently. So the train was fully booked out way in advance, and there were no seats available. And the next available train wasn't for 2 hours. So then I had a choice of, you know, waiting for 2 hours to take the express train. And now suddenly the express train is not so express anymore, because there's only a train every 1 or 2 hours. And if you miss one of them, you got a long wait for the next one. And I missed one, and yeah, I'd have to wait 2 hours for the next one. But I decided to do it anyway because I was shooting the video. And then it turned out you can't pay cash for the ticket. It's totally cashless. I remember going to a counter, yeah, definitely in Medan at the train station, and you just go up to a counter and you book the ticket, then you give them money. Like how has money become a crazy idea these days? But it is these days now. If you try to pay for anything with money, people look at you like you're insane. It's like, okay, grandpa, you're still using money? Well, you know, what's up with that? But anyway, I used to pay with money to take this train to the airport. But when I went into the ticket area, the departure area at the Kuala Namu airport, there was no ticket counter anymore. There were only machines. So you had to book your ticket through the machine, and then you had to pay digitally. You had to pay with a credit card, a debit card, or one of the local cashless cards, e-money cards, I think they call them. And I'm a very nice young man at the counter, because they did have like an information counter. So it's kind of funny. They have all these machines that are self-service machines, but I guess they're so complicated, people have so much trouble with them, that they actually have like 4 staff members waiting there. And every time a customer comes up to use the machine, one of the staff members comes out and walks them through using the machine. So anyway, a guy came out to help me walk through the machine, and we were going through the whole process. And when we got to the payment part, I just assumed I'd be able to do something like put money into the machine. But then we got to the payment part, and the guy said to me, okay, now you have to pay. And he was waiting for me to do something, and I'm like, well, how do I pay? And he says, oh, you have to use a card. And I was like, dude, I'm a foreign tourist. I don't have a card. I don't have one of your local e-money debit cards. I don't have a local bank account. I don't have any of these things. And he says, well, you can use a credit card. And what I said to him was, well, I don't want to use a credit card because it exposes my card to risk. So I only use it in very controlled circumstances. I'm not going to break out my credit card to pay. The ticket was $2.60 US. And I'm like, I'm not going to use my credit card to pay for a $2.50 train ticket. entering it into one of these machines. I don't know how secure they are. And then he said to me, and said, well, okay, then you can't ride the train. You're done. I mean, unless you can figure out a way to pay, there's nothing we can do for you. As he told me, Grandpa, we've been cashless for years. This is just how the world is. And I joked with him a little bit. It's like, like when did money become old-fashioned? I got a wallet. My wallet is full of money. I made sure to get Indonesian rupiah before my flight. I took time out of my day to go to a money changer and get Indonesian rupiah for this exact situation. And now my money is useless. And I couldn't get a SIM card because the Medan airport is surprisingly primitive. All these guys are like grandpaing me for being so out of touch with modern technology. But man, your airport is a little bit out of touch as well, because there's no SIM card availability at the Kuala Namu airport. You fly into Medan, you can't get a SIM card there. There's all the offices, they used to have them, but they're all closed now. And they told me that, okay, you can get an e-money card at one of the convenience stores. So he was explaining this to me. I can get what they call a FLAZ card, F-L-A-Z-Z. It's the most popular e-money card. It says, okay, you just go to Indomaret, get yourself a FLAZ card, put money on the card, like top load money onto it, come back here, and then you can buy the ticket. I was like, oh, perfect. Love that idea. But then we did some investigating, and of course, there are like at least 2 Indomarets at the airport. Neither of them has any kind of card access. You can't buy a card there. You can't use a card there. So I was completely stuck. And this guy was like telling me, oh, it's no problem. No problem. All you have to do is find a local person, put your ticket on their card, and give them the money. And he kind of said that to me like it was like so obvious. And I was like talking to him like, dude, I'm a complete stranger in your country. I don't know anybody here. How can I just walk up to a random stranger and say, oh, listen, can you use your credit card to buy my train ticket, and then I'll reimburse you in cash? That seems like a tough ask, to just walk up to a stranger and have them do it for you, and with the language barrier as well. And then he said to me, he says, oh, come on, this is Indonesia. People are friendly. Everybody will be glad to help you out. And I'm thinking, maybe, but I don't know. I didn't like this idea at all. And I was thinking that my whole luxury train experience, even though I'm filming all of this, I'm not going to be able to make my video because I'm not going to be able to buy a ticket. And I kind of stood around hemming and hawing, and I'm talking into the GoPro, explaining the situation, telling the story. And I was kind of hoping that this guy who speaks English, who is very helpful, who we've been talking for a long time, I was hoping he would become my superhero and he would step in and do something for me. And eventually he kind of went, okay, you big baby, I will help you out. Because he was telling me to walk up to a total stranger and ask them to pay for me, and I can give them cash. And he finally turned to me and says, okay, I will do it for you. And he got out his FLAZ card and says, okay, I'll buy the ticket for you. And he went up to the machine and boop, 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 printed out the ticket and gave me the ticket. And then I gave him 40,000 rupiah in cash, because that's how much the ticket was. And I offered to pay him more, because when he said he would do it for me, and I said something like, okay, well, that's great. I mean, I'll give you whatever, 60, 80,000 rupiah just for helping me out. And he insisted, no, 40,000, that's what the ticket costs. Here it is, paid him 40,000 and we were done. So that was my experience of buying the ticket, which was a big, long, drawn-out process. And then I had to wait. From that point, it was like an hour and a half, because it took 30 minutes or more to buy the ticket. And now I had an hour and a half to wait for the train to arrive. And so my luxury train trip was not turning into the luxury experience I was expecting, because now I had to wait an hour and a half, and the building was not air conditioned very well. It was really hot, really sweaty. I was just exhausted. I was still feeling sick, and the whole trip to get here had exhausted me, and now I had an hour and a half to wait for the train. And I went out wandering around a little bit. I found the buses. Turns out from the airport, the public transportation building, you can get buses there directly to Sientar, and then on to Lake Toba, to Berastagi, to Medan, to Binjai, and even to Tanjung Balai, where you can take a ferry back to Malaysia. So somehow in my head, I was thinking, I want to go to Lake Toba, but I just assumed you had no choice but to land at the airport, go into Medan, spend the night or two in Medan, and then arrange for a bus to go to Lake Toba. Turns out that's the grandpa, old-fashioned way of thinking. You can just land at the airport and take a bus or a van directly from the airport to Sientar, to Parapat, and then you hop on the boat that takes you across to Tuk Tuk and Samosir Island. So only grandpas like me think old-fashioned ways. I should have known this, but if I really wanted to go to Lake Toba, I could have done it straight from the airport. You can bypass the city of Medan entirely, which I think is what most people would do, people that are smarter than me. Anyway, eventually my train arrived. I had trouble with the train too, because my ticket said car EXE1 seat 7D. So when the train arrived and you could go through the gate, and I went out onto the platform, and there's the train, but I couldn't find my car, because on the outside of the cars there were no car numbers. I'm looking for car EXE1. I assumed EXE stood for executive. So I'm walking up and down the train platform, and I'm trying to find my car, and I couldn't find it because there was no numbers on the outside of the car, like the train. And I'm looking for any kind of staff member. When you're a dumb foreigner grandpa like me, you eventually just find someone in a uniform, show them your ticket, and I'm like, where do I go? Like, can you help me out? But there was nobody there, nobody on the platform. So eventually I had no choice but just to get on the train, pick a car at random, get on, and then I was wandering up and down the train trying to find car EXE1. Couldn't find one, but I did find a car 2. I saw, okay, this is actually car number 2, so maybe this one is car number 1. That's the one for me. So I was walking through the train and went all the way up to car number 1. I found seat 7D, but my seat was already occupied. There was someone sitting in my seat. So then I'm faced with, like, what do I do? Like, go up to this poor guy and say, listen, buddy, you're in my seat. Here's my ticket. Show me your ticket. I think you're in the wrong seat. I didn't want to go through all that. I didn't even know if it was important. So, yeah, I just wandered around for a while. And to be honest, I was kind of hoping that a local person would just jump up out of their seat, take pity on me, and help me out. I was making a big deal out of looking lost. I was standing on all these trains, and I was looking at my ticket, and I had I made sure to make it look like I was confused and lost, like a lost puppy, and I was looking at the numbers, and where do I go? What do I do? I was making it really obvious that I needed help, but nobody offered help. So that didn't work. And then eventually I saw an open seat that was empty, and I thought, well, I guess I'll just sit down. So I took off my backpack, put it on this luggage rack, and then I went to the seat, which happened to be 8D, and I sat down, and I figured, well, if somebody comes up to me with a ticket and says, hey, buddy, 8D, that's my seat, you got to move, well, then I'll move to another empty seat, and if someone kicks me out of that seat, and I guess eventually I'll end up going over to the guy sitting in 7D and say, I hate to do this to you, buddy, but that's my seat, so out. And then he can go find his legitimate seat. But eventually everything worked out. Nobody challenged me. I was left in seat 8D the entire time. And then the train itself, it left at 4:15 and it arrived at 4:57. So it was like a 45-minute trip from the airport to downtown Medan. And then getting through the airport, I mean the train station in downtown Medan, man, that was an adventure. Hokey doodle. Everything was broken. You're supposed to, you get on the platform and you go down an escalator, but the escalator was broken. So everybody had to go to there's only one way to get off the platform, was on an elevator. So the entire train emptied, and then everybody had to take turns waiting for the elevator, going up and down, up and down, up and down. Took a long time to get everybody off the platform, and I was the very last person again, of course. The train station itself, the road outside, the train station, everything was under construction. Everything was torn to pieces. And it was really hard to find my way through the train station. It was a crazy, crazy place. And then I got out into the world, and man, it hit me full on. Medan is a crazy, crowded, nutty kind of place. It's a rough, rough city. And to go from gentle, quiet, soft-spoken Kuala Lumpur, land in Medan, man, it is like a punch in the face. It's crazy, especially around the train station. So many people, a lot of people, their attention focused on me. There were a lot of people asking for money. There were a lot of like really young guys, young boys, all lined up near the train station asking for money. And I would normally have money to give people, but in this case, I wasn't prepared for that. And I got my heavy backpack on my back. I've got my knapsack in my hand, and I've got a GoPro. So I'm occupied. I'm shooting a video, and these people are asking for money. People are engaging with me, wanting to talk to me, and it was all a bit overwhelming. I couldn't do it. It's not like I could stop and take out money. So I'm like, sorry. I'm occupied here. I'm not an octopus. All of my limbs are occupied with carrying and holding things. I can't give you guys any money. And the construction and trying to get out of the train station, I'm going up and down stairs, the noise, the honking, the traffic. And then I had to walk for about 1.5 kilometers from the train station to my hotel, down this unbelievably crowded street, traffic jams, sidewalks, trying to get across, hot, sweating. It was a crazy, crazy walk. And I eventually found my hotel, but man, it was not easy. And of course, I don't have a SIM card yet. I don't have any way of getting online, so like Google Maps is not really working. I couldn't even find my hotel on Google Maps. I could track my progress on satellite view, but I couldn't see where my hotel was, because on Google Maps, without an online connection, it shows you less detail. And I forgot about this. I could see the streets, but my hotel, no matter how far I zoomed in or zoomed out, it wouldn't appear on Google Maps. So I had to kind of guess where it was. Oh, what a crazy, crazy journey that was. And I finally got to my hotel, and here I am. It is called the Wisma Sederhana. And online on Google, on Agoda, they have some really nice pictures. It looks like a very nice, spacious kind of hotel. And again, I have no trouble with this hotel. It's right in my wheelhouse. This is actually more comfortable than hotels I used to use in the past, because I do have a comfortable bed, and I have a bathroom, private bathroom, has hot water, air conditioning, Wi-Fi. The hotel even has an elevator. And one thing I like about this place, which I admire a lot, is they have a little store that they put together themselves. So in the lobby area, they have just a couple of shelves, but I mean, they sell toothbrushes and razor blades and bottles of water, little items, bathroom slippers, flip-flops, things like that. They're thinking ahead to what their customers might need. And as I said, there's a hot water and a cold water dispenser near the lobby area. And there's even a little restaurant right in the lobby too. You can get a meal there. So yeah, it kind of suits me very well. But having said all that, compared to where I was staying in KL, it's like a real step down in terms of features and comfort and that kind of thing. It's one of these hotels that I really, really like because it's an old hotel. It has old bones. So it has kind of the structure of a fairly nice, like two-star hotel, but decades ago. And so everything now is kind of broken. Like the door doesn't really close because on its hinges, you know, you kind of have to lift it up and slam it shut. And everything in the bathroom is kind of broken, and everything is falling apart. It's like an old-fashioned kind of place, but it obviously has a life of its own. It's a really interesting hotel. But I think it's actually, I forget what I paid for it right now, but it's more expensive than where I was staying in Kuala Lumpur, but it's many steps down in terms of conveniences. So when I did get here last night, you know, I turned on the air conditioner and it was like, is it even working, right? You put your hand in front of it and yeah, some cold air, a little bit on one side is kind of coming out of the air conditioner. It's just enough to cool the room down to make it okay. But it's not like it's an air conditioner that's blasting out cold air. And my little hotel in Kuala Lumpur had a lot of convenient features. So just simple things that a person like me needs, where there will be electrical outlets in convenient locations. And in the hotel, in fact, there was a modern sort of outlet that had like an international plug, so you don't even need adapters anymore. Any plug you have will go into it, and it has 2 USB-A ports, so you can just plug things in to charge up your smartphones and stuff like that. But here in this room, there's like one outlet that the TV is plugged into, so that's fine. I unplug the TV, and then I have to have all of my gear. That also, I was talking about how when you travel on a higher budget, it makes life so much easier and your bag can be so much lighter, because what I need to do, I have to have an extension cord, because in these rooms there's always one electrical outlet. It's on the far wall beside the door, so you have to have an extension cord that can run all the way from that one outlet to the bed, and then you have to have a power bar because you have to plug in so many items. So I have to have an extension cord, a power bar, and that's so I can plug in my laptop here on the bed. And of course, if you're staying at a nicer hotel, there will be electrical outlets everywhere, and then there will be USB-A charging ports. You know, you don't have to bring all of your own gear, you know, all the time. But anyway, when I got here last night, I was exhausted. The final straw, I think, in terms of my physical and mental state, was just walking from the train station to here. And that's normal for me. If my hotel is like 1 or 2 kilometers away from the train station, I'm not going to bother with a Grab or a Gojek or a taxi. You know, I've got a backpack, I've got legs, I've got feet. What do I need a taxi for? So, you know, I just put on my backpack and then I walk the 1.5 kilometers to get here. But I was going through some really rough neighborhoods to get here. If you're a bit nervous, yeah, if you're worried about things and you're not that comfortable in this part of the world, you probably wouldn't want to do even that walk that I did yesterday. I mean, I'm accustomed to it. I've been to Medan before. I've been to Indonesian cities before. I'll walk everywhere. I'm fine with it. But I can see like a newcomer to this part of the world would probably freak out a little bit. The neighborhoods that I was walking through, you're like, where am I? You feel like you're going to be kidnapped or robbed at any second. It was a pretty rough area. So anyway, I did the walk here, and the traffic was unbelievable. It was like right at rush hour, because I landed at the train station. I arrived at the train station at 5 o'clock. Probably took me 30-40 minutes just to get out of the train station. And then, so I was right in the middle of the rush hour, and the streets here were just jammed. Walking across the intersections was crazy. It was really hard to do. And I was like mentally and physically kind of at my limit. And I finally got here hoping that this was the right hotel because I booked it in advance. And it wasn't beyond possibility that there were two Wisma Sederhana, because there's like a Wisma Sederhana budget and a Wisma Sederhana another one or something. And I was hoping I was going to the right one. I did go to the right one. The woman who checked me in was really nice, really friendly, spoke just enough English to get me through the check-in process. They had my reservation, you know, they just had to take a picture of my passport, and then they gave me the electronic key card, and I got 2 small bottles of water, a towel. There's actually soap provided and shampoo provided, but by the time I got into my room, I was exhausted. I was so sweaty. And then plugging in all my electronics, getting unpacked and getting organized, that took a lot of effort, a lot of energy. And then I just collapsed. I was done. A 1-hour flight, that's all it was to get here. But I felt like I had gone on a 10-year journey. All the stages, all the preparations, everything I did to get here. Man, that was hard. It was a long, tough, grueling journey. It was like one of the tougher journeys I've ever gone on, which is weird. But I guess it was partially because I wasn't feeling well. And I'd introduced so many of the electronic stages, doing the e-visa on arrival, which took half a day to get that done, and the customs declaration, then the airports, and oh man. But I like to think my experience was interesting. I mean, I've been talking about it for at least an hour and a half already, probably 2 hours. So traveling on a low budget, you do have a lot more experiences along the way. And but yeah, my arrival still isn't done though, because I still don't have a SIM card. And I've talked about this in the past endlessly, that Indonesia has made SIM cards and smartphones, not SIM cards, but they made smartphones unbelievably complicated. Like every time I come here, I have to come with a new smartphone because customs blocks your smartphone after a certain number of months. And now today is Sunday, everything is closed, so I have to stay here an extra day just to go to a special Telkomsel Grapari office so that I can give them all of my smartphones and just say, this is what I've got. I've already got 3 SIM cards. I've got 3 phones. None of them, they're all blocked by you guys. Your customs has blocked all of them. Like, what can you do for me? Can you extend my customs registration, my email registration on any of them? Do I have 30 days left on any of them? I don't know what's going on anymore. Here are my phones. Like, can you do something for me? That's going to take half a day just to get a SIM card. And now I also have to get a local debit card, like one of these FLAS cards. And in fact, that's the first thing I'm going to do today, is I'm going to go out into this neighborhood, walk around a little bit, and I'm going to find an Indomaret and see if I can get a FLAS card. And once I have one of these e-money cards, maybe that I can use that a lot while I'm in Indonesia. So today is all about just resting. I'm exhausted. I need a whole day just to do nothing, and then getting a FLAS card. That's all I'm going to do. And then tomorrow is going to be all about getting a SIM card. I'm going to dedicate a day. So maybe I really have to look into these eSIMs now. I know a lot more about them. I was talking to Bill, the international big shot. He's a big believer in eSIMs. We had coffee the other day in Kuala Lumpur, and I picked his brain because I don't know how eSIMs work. Logically, they don't make any sense to me, because like in a place like Indonesia, they're very concerned about having foreigners in their country. They want to know where you are, where you're going, and what you're doing. So it's not as easy as just getting a SIM card and you're free to go. You know, you have to register your phone with customs, and then everything is controlled, and they turn off a lot of things. You don't have access to certain websites because, yeah, they control things here. And they do that partially through your smartphone and SIM card. And yet, as far as I understand how eSIMs work, You just go online, get an eSIM, and you're done. But you still need a mobile internet provider, right? So even if you have an eSIM, how do you get on the internet? You still have to go through one of the local mobile internet providers like Telkomsel, right? So how in the world does that work? Like if I get an official Telkomsel SIM card, I have to go to a Telkomsel office, and it takes them about an hour to do all of the registration process to give you a SIM card. So how is it that I can bypass all of those control systems and just get an eSIM? Boop, I'm done. And they have no ability to control what I do anymore? It doesn't make any sense to me. So I didn't get an eSIM, and we'll see how it works, though. Maybe next time, if I ever go on another trip ever again in my life, maybe I'll get an eSIM for that trip. I'll get an e-visa, e-customs, e-arrival card, and eSIM. I'll do everything, and maybe I can figure out how eSIMs work in the future. But anyway, we'll see how that works out. So I think that's the end of the story of my trip and my arrival here, and now I'm going to go out to an Indomaret and try to get myself a FLAS card. That's going to be my big adventure for today. So that's it. Behind the scenes on Planet Doug, shutting down, and I'll see you in the next video.